Welcome. I'm Terry Christensen, and this is Valley Politics. Our topic today is the future development of the Valley and the Greater Bay Area region. We'll talk with Fred Buzo, the San Jose director for Spur, which is sort of a regional think tank focused on sustainable and equitable urban growth and development. We'll have questions for Fred from Megan Fluke of Green Foothills and Robert Wood of San Jose State University. Then, as San Jose's Charter Review Commission considers changing the city's form of government, we'll revisit our 2018 interview with Ron James, the city's first directly elected mayor under the council-manager form of government, serving from 1967 to 71. Stay tuned to hear what the former mayor had to say when we asked him if it was time for San Jose to move to a strong mayor form of government. And that's what's coming up on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome Fred Buzo, San Jose Director for Spur. So Fred, could you just get us started by talking a little bit about the mission of Spur, your specific job, and what prepared you to do the job?
Yeah, so Spur is an urban planning research organization that through research and education and advocacy is working towards creating an equitable, sustainable, and prosperous Bay Area. And obviously a huge part of the Bay Area is the city of San Jose. Spur has 3 offices, one in San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. I am the San Jose director for Spur. Prior to working for Spur, I worked a number of years in City Hall, worked for the current mayor as a mayor, and then while he was council member for 7 years or so, learned a lot about community engagement and outreach while working for Mayor Liccardo when he was a council member. And then after leaving Mayor Liccardo's office, I was chief of staff in District 4. And so I got to see another side of San Jose, another area of San Jose, Alviso, North San Jose, Berryessa. Enjoyed my time there as well. I love going out and meeting folks throughout the city. And but I moved on. Then moved on to AARP California. And AARP, as you know, is a massive nonprofit organization.
I'm a member.
Yes, so am I. And they were opening an office in San Jose. They had actually closed their office in San Francisco in favor of opening an office in San Jose. And I thought that showed a great commitment to the city of San Jose. And that's what really drew me to that role. And it was also in that role, though, that I was actually able to really hone my advocacy skills. Got to work at the local level, at the state level in the legislature, and even sometimes on Capitol Hill, and advocating for issues around prices of pharmaceuticals, healthcare, Social Security, things like that. And so learned a lot at AARP, and then I was able to bring that to Spur.
And your job as San Jose Director of Spur is similar to what you're doing with AARP, I suppose, advocacy and helping with policy research.
Yeah, in some ways, it's AARP, when they opened their office here in San Jose, decided to try something new. And that was, how can we have impact at the local level on land use issues? And so we went about actually engaging the city officials, neighborhoods in Berryessa on North 13th Street in a series of workshops called the Charrette around how we could build a better neighborhood around North 13th Street, around the Berryessa BART urban village. And so it really sort of brought to light issues that were facing older adults that a lot of people don't think about when they think about urban planning. People tend to think about other people other than older adults. So yeah, it really was through that process, I think, that really led me to Spur, because Spur works so much and does so much research in the land use and urban planning arenas.
Well, I want to get right into the headlines. So Governor Newsom just signed 2 land use bills, SB 9 and SB 35, which combined severely restrict local government's capacity to do zoning, specifically single-family zoning. So SB 9 allows 2 to 4 units on a single lot, which normally would be single family. SB 35 allows up to 10 units on lots near transit. What's Spur's view on these policies?
Well, Spur was a strong supporter of both measures. More recently with SB 9, Spur was a supporter of that proposal, and now is really looking toward working with the city in how that can be implemented in a good way, because just because something's passed in Sacramento doesn't mean anything's actually going to happen.
Right.
So cities actually have to implement laws, and as you know, there are many cities in the Bay Area who are probably going to resist SB 9. They're going to not want to implement it, just like they've done with ADUs. And so organizations like Spur and our partner organizations like Silicon Valley at Home are going to have to go out and work with these cities to really try to create a streamlined process where these laws can be implemented. But you need, unfortunately, we needed the state to step in because there were so many local jurisdictions who just weren't doing what needs to be done in order to build the number of housing units that everyone acknowledges we need, but for some reason they just aren't able to do it. So the state had to step in.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if you weren't fighting a ballot measure next year, as a referendum on it, because there's, as you already know, going to be significant resistance to it, not just in those cities, but in big cities like San Jose, where people are panicking about what's happening to their single-family zoning.
Right.
Which brings us to opportunity housing. So this is another proposal that many cities are considering. San Jose is going to vote on whether to study it next month, but that would get rid of single-family zoning. Berkeley's already done it. A couple of other cities have done it in other parts of the country. Does Spur have a position on opportunity housing?
Yeah, opportunity housing, we've been in favor of the idea of at least studying the issue since it was introduced back in 2019. And so there is no one-size-fits-all policy solution for this housing crisis. And so we believe that the city should study opportunity housing. Now, whether or not it ends up being called opportunity housing, given the passage of SB 9, I don't know. But is SB 9 a perfect law? No, of course not. I mean, there is no such thing as a perfect law. And so we feel that, that we do need a little bit of time to see what the implications of SB 9 will be on opportunity housing. I believe the city planning department is essentially saying the same thing. They need some more time. And we'll see where it all lands. But whether you call it SB 9 or a streamlined implementation for opportunity housing, I think they can all fit together. And so it's really about trying to figure out what that sweet spot is as you move forward.
It might be just fine to study opportunity housing for a while SB 9 and 35 begin to come into effect, to kind of see to what extent they really address the problem or solve it or don't.
Yeah, correct. I mean, because I think the current timeline is for opportunity housing, if the city council agrees to study it, it's probably not going to come back for another 2 or 3 years. So during that time, you can see what the effect of SB 9 is, and if it has the kind of effect that some people think it's going to have, meaning the sky is falling, then maybe you revisit opportunity housing. But given what we've seen in other major cities that have passed similar local ordinances, Minneapolis and Portland, you haven't seen a huge influx of residential units, because ultimately it's up to the property owner to determine whether or not it's a good fit for them. And so it provides the property owner, the single family property owner, with a choice. And like ADUs, some folks are doing it, other folks are not. Just depends.
Right. Some of the critics like to say the developers will come in and do this, but it's not the developers, it's the owners of the property, the single family dwelling unit property owner who can exercise this option. And I think there's a residency requirement too. You have to live there.
For SB 9, there is an owner occupancy requirement. That is correct.
So that kind of, that just means developers can't just pop in and do spec housing on site. So that's some insurance. I think,
some insurance, yes.
For some people's concerns. Well, Fred, we have a question now from Robert Chapman Wood. Robert is a professor of strategic management at San Jose State University, and he is the chair of the California Faculty Association's Committee on Housing, and I'm an adjunct member as a professor emeritus. Even though I've got housing, our faculty certainly still needs housing. So here's Robert's question.
Welcome to Spur, Mr. Buzo, and thanks for your very interesting work with AARP. I read with real appreciation the article on Spur's website in which you introduced your vision, and I'd like to push a little bit to expand on it. The core of your article was the importance of getting trust and achieving equity in San Jose, and an important point was that planners have failed to hear the voices of people whose experience with high density have not been too positive and who might be looking for less density. In the past, Bay Area planning, including Spur's work in the South Bay, has emphasized mid and high-rise, mostly concrete new housing. Might we expect that your article implies that Spur will be more interested than in the past in more traditional, mostly stick-built housing, like the designs that produce so much more new housing per capita in Greater Seattle, Greater Denver, Greater Boston? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Wood, for the question. Yeah, that's what it does imply, actually. I mean, I know at some point in time, not just Spur, but many organizations will really focus on high density near transit centers. But you realize that in and of itself is not going to solve this housing crisis. And so you need housing of all shapes and sizes. And there's something else I learned at AARP is that older adults also want housing of all shapes and sizes. Not every older adult wants to live alone in a 4,000 square foot home in some part of San Jose. Sometimes they want to be able to move within their neighborhood or within their community, but into a smaller place. Not everyone wants to live in a high density residential complex near transit either. So you're going to need the ADUs, you're going to need the duplexes, the triplexes, the fourplexes, all of those things in order to really, I think, make a dent into this crisis.
Yeah, I guess SB 9 and SB 35 sort of suggest the same thing.
Correct.
Right?
That's right. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, Spur recently published a very ambitious document called A New Civic Vision, which calls for distributing housing near transit and along commercial corridors, reducing dependence on cars, putting subsidized housing in wealthier and affluent communities and neighborhoods, forcing some of those affluent cities to accept more housing construction, and also addressing race and class inequalities. It's really ambitious. That's covering a lot of ground. My question really is not about the policy recommendations.
Right.
It's about the how-to.
Yeah.
How does Spur go about getting these policy proposals adopted and implemented?
Well, I think the first step is taking these proposals and taking these reports and actually bringing them out to the community and talking to neighborhood groups and community groups about what we're recommending. Because so many times you have reports that are well researched and very well written. Spur does a great job at that.
Absolutely.
But they don't make it to the ground level. And so I think the first step is to do that, is to take these recommendations out to the community and see how folks feel about them. And go get into that question and answer mode and see how folks feel. And if the response is positive, then you move that forward. You don't go straight to the elected officials. So many times you have advocates who their advocacy begins and ends with elected officials. But I think you've got to really go community. You've got to talk to government staff, the folks who are on the front lines working these types of policy considerations. You have to go to partner organizations who may already have the trust of the community that you are attempting to work with. And so I always imagined advocacy as almost like a wheel. And so you have the community, or a pie, so to speak. You have the community, you have government staff, you have partner organizations, you have elected officials, and there are a number of other groups within that pie. And there's no place where you start or where you end. But if you are starting from the beginning with a policy that folks are unfamiliar with, you have to start with the community. And if you do not have community buy-in, then perhaps it ends right there, or you save it for another time because it's just not going to work. I don't want to get into a situation where I'm pushing for a policy that an elected official might think is great, but the community doesn't like it, you know. So
right, then the elected official can change his or her mind pretty fast.
Right.
If the community doesn't like it.
Right.
I wonder, Spur really is a big picture organization.
Yes.
But sometimes attaining the big picture is best done through micro projects. But Spur doesn't seem to engage on kind of very specific projects. Let's say an affordable housing project in Los Altos Hills, or some of the projects I'm working on around Little Portugal that could be exemplars of what you're trying to achieve. But it seems like you're always up here and not down here. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct. And the reason for that is, you know, if we started to engage on every single project, we would be getting way too many requests, and we just don't have the ability to properly analyze and research each and every project. And so that's why we really try to look at sort of citywide strategies, citywide policies that would then allow those types of projects to be built within a given jurisdiction.
That makes sense. But sometimes if you want to engage the community, you know this, Fred.
Oh yeah,
if you want to engage the community, it's going to be more at the nitty-gritty level that they're already engaged with. Well, I guess the other way that occurs to me Spur could help move its policies is by mobilizing its members. I know you have hundreds, probably thousands of members. I'm one, but I've never seen an effort to mobilize the members. Inform, yes, but to say, come to a meeting, write to your legislator. Does Spur do that at all? Am I missing something?
No, Spur does not do that. You aren't missing out on that, Terry. And you know, Spur historically, at least in over the past, you know, couple of decades or so, has been primarily a research-based organization. Yes, we do education, we do some advocacy, but I think now we are starting to look at how we could better our advocacy efforts. And you know, just this past year, we now have a full-time staff person who's focused on state legislation in Sacramento. They didn't have that. You know, we didn't have that before. So now we have someone who's doing that work. So now we're looking toward the local level, and we're really trying to determine what is the best strategy for Spur for doing local advocacy. We don't want to go into it blindly, you know. And so yeah, we are taking a really, really hard look at that because we understand how important that's going to be in the future.
Good, because I think these are good policies, but they really need powerful advocates to get them adopted and implemented. Fred, now we have a question from Megan Fluke, who's the Executive Director of Green Foothills. You probably know Megan.
I do, yes.
And here's Megan.
Thank you, Terry, and hi, Fred. My question is, how can San Jose integrate nature into urban planning to benefit ecological diversity and climate resilience? Thank you.
Well, I mean, first, cities and counties have to decide to integrate nature into urban planning. And San Jose, like many cities around California, has tons of natural amenities that are, quite frankly, many times ignored when it comes to urban planning. And so you have natural infrastructure like trees and watersheds and things of that nature that can be used, that can be utilized if they are placed into, you know, whatever urban plan the city is considering or the county is considering. But for whatever reason, most of the time, not all the time, cities and counties have chosen not to do that, but instead have done sort of what has become sort of standard engineering, which usually means you're going to have concrete and things of that nature along a river or a creek. But you know, studies have shown, and I think, you know, many people know this, something as simple as a robust tree canopy can just do so much for the health of individuals in that neighborhood. And we've seen in San Jose how there are discrepancies between neighborhoods and in Santa Clara County. There are some neighborhoods, and mostly affluent neighborhoods, that have great tree canopies. And then in the more, in the areas where you have lower income folks living, not a lot of trees, right? And so it's uneven, it's inequitable. What can you do? Well, you can plant more trees. You can, you know, develop a new tree canopy program, which my understanding is the city of San Jose is actually in the process of doing that, to ensure that you have something as simple as a tree canopy available to all residents in an equitable manner.
Let's turn to downtown San Jose for a minute. So I've lived near downtown for 50 years. I've been waiting it to become a great downtown for 50 years. It's risen, it's fallen. I think it's at a low point right now. Some of that's COVID, but there are closed restaurants. The last retail shop, Muji, left downtown. And while we see this decline, on the other hand, we're seeing headlines all the time about this big new office building or this big new residential tower that's being proposed. Where do you think it is? Is it on a rising arc? Has it bottomed out? What do you think, and what's Spur think?
Well, I think at this point, I'm going to speak for myself.
Okay.
But, you know, I've been in San Jose since the 90s or so, you know, mid-90s-ish, and I've been thinking about this lately. In many ways, you could say that downtown San Jose was more vibrant in 1999 than it was in 2019, pre-pandemic.
Yes.
I remember all of the live music venues that you could go to. Even pre-pandemic 2019, not a whole lot of live music venues that you could go to. I understand there are efforts with placemaking efforts to have live music, but I'm talking about permanent live music venues, places to go dance, to go have dinner, you know, things of that nature. I think there's been a conscious effort on the part of the city to focus on high-rise residential and on commercial office, and I understand why, but that does not necessarily translate into a vibrant city. And I think you're seeing the effects of that now, because if you had a vibrant city pre-pandemic, sure, you would have seen restaurants close and retail close, but it wouldn't be as bad as it is now. So I don't think all the blame should be placed on the pandemic. I think even pre-pandemic, there were a lot of questions regarding retail and restaurants and entertainment venues that were lacking in downtown San Jose. And so I hope that when the city, you know, when we reemerge from this pandemic, and we're going to have to, right? Yeah. That we look at it in a more holistic way and not just focus on high-rise residential and commercial office, but let's focus on everything that makes a city a city.
It's getting all that retail space they keep putting on the ground floors, getting it occupied.
Yeah.
There's plenty of retail space.
Yep.
And there will be more if these things get built.
That's right.
So that's another strategy Spur can work on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is something that we are taking a look at. And hopefully at some point you'll be reading a report that where that is highlighted.
Great. What about politics, specifically electoral politics? Does Spur endorse candidates?
No, we do not.
You take positions on ballot measures, though?
Yes, we do. Sometimes. Yes, we do.
Well, there will be ballot measures next year on the San Jose city ballot about charter change. The Charter Revision Commission is working on some proposals right now. Some of them will affect how development happens. Do you expect Spur to weigh in on those?
It's possible. Right now, we are working on a report, focused in Oakland mostly, though, on their form of government, and so it's not done yet. But I think what the recommendations that come out of that report may inform, you know, what we do here in San Jose, if those ballot measures qualify. So obviously, it's possible.
Obviously, it will depend on what the ballot measures are, but strengthening the powers of the mayor could be one of the things.
Yeah.
Expanding the size of the council, changing the balance of power between the mayor and the council, and all these things affect development and outcomes.
Yeah, so Spur could very well weigh in on those.
Fred, we're almost out of time. So just in closing, tell us how viewers could connect with Spur if they're interested.
Well, I think the easiest way is to email me. And I'm open to an email from anybody. So you can email me at F as in Fred, Buzo, B-U-Z-O, @spur.org. Or feel free to give me a call, 408-460-8568. I would love to be able to talk to the people of San Jose and, well, Santa Clara County in general about how they're feeling about living in Silicon Valley right now.
Okay, and if the people go to the Spur website, they can find out about programs that Spur runs at least a couple times a week that are on pretty interesting current topics too.
Absolutely, yeah. We have several programs a week. Not all San Jose focused, but you know, you have San Francisco focused, Oakland focused, and then San Jose focused, and then Bay Area regionally focused programming. We just had one this morning that featured the mayors from the 3 major cities, so Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose. And the turnout was great, and so yeah, we have programs on various topics.
You're going to get back to live programs eventually?
Yes, we are.
Good.
We are going to get back to that.
Good, I'll be there. Fred Buzo of Spur, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We've been closing our shows these past few months with excerpts from previous guests talking about San Jose's form of government as the city's Charter Review Commission considers changes. Let's hear now what Ron James had to say when we asked him if it's time for San Jose to move to a strong mayor form of government. Ron was the first directly elected mayor under the council-manager form of government, serving from 1967 to 1971. Here's Ron. So, final question. You were the mayor, first directly elected mayor. A lot of people are talking about shifting San Jose from a council-manager form of government with a mayor to a strong mayor form of government. What do you think about that idea, strong mayor form of government for the city of San Jose?
As long as you have the right mayor.
Well, that's the tricky part.
It could work. It's an increased responsibility. The mayor now has some budget say-so,
Yeah.
which has evolved, and the whole concept of the mayor has evolved from when I was elected 50 years ago until today, and I think it's a natural evolution. It'll probably come as the city grows. More and more people will come into San Jose that have come from a city where they experienced a strong mayor form of government, and they may feel more comfortable with it. Yeah.
People do look to mayors for leaders.
Sure.
Leadership. And you were one of our leaders. So, Ron James, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. That was former San Jose Mayor Ron James commenting on charter revision. And that'll be the final excerpt on this topic from our history interviews. If you'd like to see other comments, search for Create TV San Jose on YouTube and scroll down to our past 5 shows starting last May. At the end of each of these shows, we played an excerpt on charter revision from our history interviews. You can see the full interviews in the section labeled Valley Politics History Interviews. Next month, we'll be back with special guests to talk about redistricting of the County Board of Supervisors and the San Jose City Council. Meanwhile, you can follow us on Facebook, and you can catch up on all our previous shows on our website at createtvsj.org or on YouTube by searching for Create TV San Jose. And now, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching.